I used to believe that love was supposed to be gentle, something like springtime after a long, harsh winter. But the truth was, my own experience with love left me with nothing but cold winds and a child to shield from them. My name is Parkha, and I am 24 years old. I am an Omega, a single father, a man still trying to stitch his broken pieces together while carrying a little boy who thinks the world of me. Daddy, faster. Woorim wants ice cream. My 3-year-old son tugged at the hem of my jacket, his chubby little legs working as hard as they could to keep up with me. His laughter was like sunlight. No matter how heavy my heart was, Woorim always managed to brighten it. He had my almond-shaped eyes, a bit rounder and full of curiosity, and the stubborn little pout that reminded me of someone I hated to even think about, Sobin. The man who had once sworn he loved me. The man who whispered promises in the dark. The man who dumped me the second he realized I was pregnant. A beta. My mistake. My nightmare. I brushed those thoughts aside as I carried Woorim into the bustling mall, the weekend crowd buzzing around us. The fluorescent lights were almost too bright, the voices too loud, but Woorim's hand in mine grounded me. Okay. Ice cream first, I said, crouching down to ruffle his silky black hair. But only one scoop. And then we need to get you some warmer clothes, all right? It's getting colder. He pouted, his round cheeks puffing up. 2 scoops. 1. 2. We stared at each other in mock seriousness until his giggles broke the silence. I gave in with a sigh. Fine. 2. You're a little tyrant, Woorim. His face lit up, and I couldn't help but laugh with him. We walked toward the ice cream shop near the center of the mall. The smell of waffles and sugar filled the air. Woorim's tiny sneakers squeaked against the polished floor as he dragged me along with surprising strength. That was when it happened. Woorim suddenly let go of my hand, running a few steps ahead. His voice carried across the busy walkway as he pointed at a tall man in a sharp black suit standing near the escalator. Daddy! My heart stopped. The man turned his head at the sound of the word. His gaze was sharp, cold, like ice cutting through the noise of the mall. His presence was overwhelming, almost predatory. An alpha. My instincts screamed it even before my mind processed it. The crowd seemed to part around him, as if no one dared get too close. His dark eyes locked onto Woorim, then shifted to me. Heat rushed to my cheeks. Woorim. I hurried forward, scooping my son into my arms. That's not Daddy, sweetheart. My voice was trembling. Don't run off like that, okay? Woorim tilted his head, still pointing at the stranger. But he looks like Daddy. I swallowed hard, refusing to let my expression betray me. There was no Daddy. There was no one. Just me. The alpha's gaze lingered, unwavering. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something deeper, something that made my stomach twist in both fear and something I didn't want to name. He walked toward us, his polished shoes clicking against the floor. You. His voice was low, commanding, like thunder rumbling before a storm. I instinctively tightened my arms around Woorim. I'm sorry if my son bothered you. He's just a child. We'll be going now. But he didn't move aside. He stopped right in front of me, so close I could see the faint scar that ran across his jawline, the way his perfectly tailored suit hugged his broad shoulders. His scent hit me, a deep, intoxicating alpha pheromone that made my knees weak despite myself. My Omega instincts were screaming at me to submit, but I clenched my teeth, fighting against it. The alpha's eyes dropped to Woorim, who blinked up at him with innocent wonder. Is he yours? The man asked. Yes, I replied immediately, my voice sharper than I intended. The alpha's brow arched slightly, as if my tone amused him. He called me Daddy. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. He doesn't know what he's saying, I muttered, avoiding his gaze. Kids say things like that sometimes. But Woorim, traitor that he was, reached out a tiny hand toward the stranger. Daddy. My chest constricted. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. The alpha surprised me then. He crouched down, meeting Woorim's eyes directly. There was a softness, brief, almost hidden, in his expression. Daddy, huh? He said quietly, his lips curving in the faintest of smirks. You must be mistaken, little one. But he looked up at me again, his gaze piercing. Maybe not entirely. I shivered. Who was this man? Why was his presence shaking me so badly? Come on, Woorim, I whispered, pulling him back. We should go. But the alpha straightened, his towering frame blocking my path. I'm Liene, he said simply, as though that name should mean something to me. And perhaps it did, because the whispers around us grew louder. passers-by murmuring as though a celebrity had just walked by. Liene, I repeated, confused. He smirked faintly. You'll remember it soon enough. And just like that, his attention shifted back to Wurim. His gaze lingered on my son in a way that made my chest ache. Protective, possessive, as though in the span of seconds, he had already made a decision. Don't call strangers daddy, Wurim, I said sternly, my voice trembling. You only have one daddy, and my words broke. I couldn't finish. Liene tilted his head, watching me with a look I couldn't decipher. Something dark, something dangerous, and yet something warm. Wurim leaned against my chest, but before I could turn away, his little voice piped up again, innocent and honest. Daddy smells nice. The world seemed to stop. Liene chuckled lowly, the sound sending chills down my spine. Smart boy. I wanted to disappear. This was the beginning. I didn't know it yet, but that one word from my son had tied my fate to this alpha in ways I couldn't escape. If someone had told me that a single word, daddy, would entangle me with the kind of alpha people whispered about in fear, I would have laughed. Or cried. Or both. But there I was, standing awkwardly at the ice cream shop inside the mall. My son perched happily on a high stool, swinging his legs, while Liene, the alpha stranger, stood beside us as if he had every right to be there. And maybe he thought he did. I didn't invite him. I didn't want him. And yet he followed. You don't have to stand there, I muttered under my breath, keeping my voice low so Wurim wouldn't hear. You can leave. Liene ignored me. His attention was fully on Wurim, who was licking at his strawberry cone like it was the most precious treasure in the world. You like strawberry? Liene asked him, his deep voice softening ever so slightly. Wurim's eyes lit up. Yes, Daddy always buys strawberry for me. I flinched at the word. Wurim. Liene's lips curved into a subtle smirk. Good choice. Strong flavor for a strong boy. Wurim giggled, the sound echoing like bells. I'm strong. Look. He flexed his tiny arms, no muscle in sight, but his determination made my chest ache with warmth. Liene nodded solemnly, as if this was the most important declaration he had ever heard. Very strong. I wanted to scream. Why was he entertaining this? Why was he still here? And why was Wurim looking at him with such open adoration? The server handed me my own cup of vanilla, and I tried to focus on the simple act of eating. But I could feel Liene's presence beside me like a storm cloud, heavy and unavoidable. You don't know us, I said finally, keeping my tone even. So why are you here? Why are you? My eyes flicked toward Wurim. Why are you encouraging this? Liene leaned one elbow on the counter, his dark eyes sliding back to me. There was something in his gaze that made my breath hitch, amusement, interest, danger. Because he asked, he said simply. That's not. I lowered my voice when Wurim glanced between us curiously. That's not a reason. You're a stranger. He shouldn't be calling you that. Liene tilted his head. Do you correct him every time he asks for a father? The question sliced through me. I froze, the spoon in my hand trembling. That's none of your business. He didn't press further, but his eyes told me he'd already read the answer in my silence. Wurim finished his cone, his lips sticky, and leaned toward Liene without hesitation. Wipe, he demanded. My eyes widened in horror as Liene, this terrifying alpha, this ruthless man whose very aura made others scatter, pulled a napkin from the dispenser and gently wiped Wurim's mouth. His large hand dwarfed my son's tiny face, but the motion was careful, almost tender. Wurim beamed. Thank you, Daddy. I buried my face in my hands. This was a nightmare. A confusing, surreal nightmare. When I finally looked up, Liene's gaze met mine again. There was a challenge there, unspoken but heavy. Deny me if you can. I swallowed hard. We left the shop soon after. Or rather, I tried to leave. But Liene followed, his pace unhurried, his presence a shadow I couldn't shake. You really don't have to keep following us, I said, adjusting Wurim on my hip. We're fine. Are you? His tone was calm, but the weight of it pressed against me like a wall. I clenched my jaw. Yes. He hummed, unconvinced. Wurim reached toward him again. Daddy, carry me? I froze. Wurim. Before I could protest further, Liene effortlessly lifted my son into his arms. Wurim giggled, wrapping his small arms around the alpha's neck as though he'd known him forever. Something twisted in my chest at the sight. Fear, longing, anger, all tangled together. Put him down, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Now. Liene glanced at me, his expression unreadable. He's fine. That's not the point. He's my son. For a moment, silence hung between us, thick with tension. Wu Rim, oblivious, played with the buttons of Li Jin's suit. Finally, Li Jin spoke, his voice low. Then you should be glad he's safe with me. My heart skipped. Who did he think he was? I wanted to shout, to demand he let go, to take Wu Rim and run. But when I looked at my son's face, so happy, so secure in the arms of a man he'd known for less than an hour, I felt my strength falter. Because part of me envied him. Envy for the comfort, for the illusion of family, for something I couldn't give him on my own. I shook the thought away violently. No, I wouldn't let history repeat itself. Not again. As we walked through the mall, I caught whispers around us. Isn't that Li Jin? The CEO of Li Group? They say he's ruthless, cold-blooded. My blood ran cold. So that was why his name sounded familiar. He wasn't just any alpha. He was that alpha. The one whose business empire stretched across Seoul. The one people both feared and admired. And he was holding my son like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't know whether to laugh or collapse. When we finally reached the parking lot, I turned to face him, my chest heaving. This, whatever this is, it ends here. Thank you for entertaining him. But we don't need you. Li Jin's eyes narrowed slightly. He set Wu Rim down gently, then straightened to his full height, towering over me. You think you get to decide? He asked, his voice dangerously calm. Yes, I snapped, though my knees shook. I'm his parent, his only parent, and I don't need anyone else interfering. Li Jin studied me for a long moment, his gaze sharp enough to cut. Then, to my surprise, his lips curved into a faint smile. Then prove it. I blinked. What? Prove you don't need anyone else. Because your son already disagrees. My chest tightened painfully. Wu Rim tugged at my sleeve. Daddy, can we see him again? I froze, caught between his innocent eyes and the alpha's piercing stare. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't supposed to feel like this. And yet, as Li Jin walked away, his voice lingered in my ears. You'll see me again, Parkha. And next time, don't fight it too much. My name on his lips made me shiver. I hated it. I hated him. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about the way he held Wu Rim. The way, just for a moment, I almost believed the word daddy. If I had thought that walking away from him at the mall would be the end, I was foolish. Li Jin wasn't the kind of man you dismissed. He was the kind of man the world bent around, the kind people whispered about but never challenged. And I had told him no. A week passed. A week of me trying to convince Wu Rim that the man he met wasn't daddy, wasn't anything, wasn't ours. But Wu Rim, every night before bed, his little voice would ask the same question. Daddy, when will we see daddy again? And every night, my heart broke a little more. I told myself it would fade. Children were fickle, easily distracted. But no matter what toys I bought, what stories I read, what outings we had, he always circled back to the alpha. To him. It made me restless, angry even. I hated that someone like Li Jin could plant himself in our lives so easily, without permission, without warning. I thought I was rid of him. Until the morning I dropped Wu Rim at daycare. The teacher greeted me warmly, and I knelt to kiss my son goodbye. His chubby hands clung to me, reluctant as always. Daddy, pick me up soon, okay? He whispered. Of course, sweetheart, I murmured, pressing my lips to his hair. Be good. I straightened, adjusted my bag, and turned, only to freeze. Because standing outside the gate, surrounded by a few bowing staff members, was him. Li Jin. Sharp suit, unreadable expression, eyes locking onto me like he had been waiting. My stomach dropped. You. Good morning, Parkha, he said, his deep voice smooth, casual, as if we were acquaintances running into each other. What are you doing here? I hissed, glancing nervously at the teachers. He ignored the question, crouching down instead. Wu Rim's face lit up. Daddy, he squealed, rushing to the gate, tiny fingers poking through the bars. The teachers looked confused. One of them, Ms. Kong, tilted her head. Parkha, is this? He's not his father, I said quickly, my cheeks burning. There's been a mistake. Li Jin's smirk deepened, but he didn't correct me. Instead, he leaned closer to Wu Rim. Be good today, he told him, his voice surprisingly gentle. I'll see you later. Wu Rim clapped his hands in excitement, and my heart sank. When I tried to walk past, Li Jin fell into step beside me, his cologne enveloping me, dizzying. You can't just show up like that, I snapped under my breath. I can, he replied easily. I glared at him. You're not part of his life. You're not part of my life. So stop interfering. We walked down the street together, an odd pair, and I hated how people's eyes lingered on him. Finally, he stopped, turning to face me. His gaze was intense, pinning me in place. You're right, he said. I'm not part of your life. Yet. I blinked, thrown. What? You should be grateful, he cut in, his tone sharp. Your son is reaching out for something you can't give him. And he chose me. My chest tightened. He doesn't know what he's saying. He's just a child. Liene's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Children don't lie about who they feel safe with. I wanted to scream. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked away, my pulse racing. But that night, when I went to pick up Rim, I saw him again, leaning against his black car, waiting. Get in, he said when I approached. No. Rim's tired, he said, as if that explained everything. I'll drive you home. I hesitated. Rim was already reaching toward him, eyes bright. I should have said no. I should have walked away. But instead, I found myself buckling my son into the back seat of a luxury car, sitting stiffly beside the Alpha I had sworn to avoid. The drive was quiet, the hum of the engine filling the space between us. Rim hummed a little tune, half asleep, clutching his stuffed bunny. Finally, I spoke, my voice low. Why are you doing this? Liene didn't look at me. Because he asked. That's not a reason, I whispered. His hand tightened briefly on the wheel. It's enough for me. I turned away, staring out the window, my chest aching with something I refused to name. When we arrived, he carried Rim inside as if he had always belonged there, setting him gently on his small bed. He lingered a moment, brushing a strand of hair from my son's face. My throat tightened. When he turned to leave, I followed him to the door. Don't come back, I whispered. He paused, looking down at me. You don't believe that? Yes, I do. His gaze dropped to my lips. For a heartbeat, the air shifted, thickened. His pheromones pressed against me, making my knees weak, my instincts screaming at me to lean closer. I hated it. I hated how much I wanted it. But he only smirked faintly, stepping back. Good night, Parkha. And just like that, he was gone. But my heart was racing long after. I wanted to believe it was just a phase. That Rim would forget about him eventually. That alphas like Liene didn't linger. But I was wrong. Days turned into weeks, and Liene kept appearing. At the daycare, outside the grocery store, even once in front of my tiny apartment, leaning casually against his sleek black car as though he owned the street. Every time, my heart would lurch between panic and something dangerously close to relief. Because he kept coming back. And worse, Rim expected him to. Daddy! Rim squealed one Friday evening, running across the playground into Liene's arms as though it was the most natural thing in the world. I froze. My pulse quickened as I watched the Alpha lift my son effortlessly, his cold expression softening ever so slightly as Rim clung to his neck. This was wrong. This was dangerous. But it was happening. Rim, come here. I called, my voice sharper than intended. Now. He pouted, reluctant to let go, but finally shuffled back to me, his little hand clutching mine. I glared at Liene. You can't just keep showing up. This isn't your place. His dark eyes met mine, unwavering. He thinks it is. That's not a reason. He smirked faintly. It's enough for me. I clenched my fists, furious at how easily he twisted my words back. But when I looked at Rim, his bright eyes full of joy, I faltered. Later that night, after putting Rim to bed, I found myself pacing the living room. My chest was tight, my head aching. And then there was a knock at the door. I froze. When I opened it, he was there. Tall. Unshakable. His scent flooding the narrow hallway, making my Omega instincts quiver. What are you doing here? I whispered. He looked at me for a long moment before stepping inside, uninvited. His presence filled the small space, overwhelming. You need to stop, I said quickly, my back hitting the wall as he closed the door behind him. You need to leave us alone. He didn't move closer, but his gaze pinned me. Tell me you want me gone, he said softly. Tell me and I'll leave. My throat tightened. The words sat heavy on my tongue, but they wouldn't come. Because deep down, I didn't want him gone. And he knew it. Liene stepped closer, slow, deliberate, until his body towered over mine, his scent wrapping around me like chains. Why are you doing this? I whispered, my voice trembling. Why us? Why me? His hand lifted, fingers brushing a strand of hair from my forehead. The touch was gentle, but it burned. Because I want to, he said simply. I shivered. My body betrayed me, leaning into the warmth even as my mind screamed to run. "Don't," my voice cracked. "Don't play with me. Don't pretend." His eyes softened, just slightly. "I don't play, Parkha." Before I could answer, his lips brushed mine. Light. Testing. I froze. My heart raced, my body burning, my instincts screaming to yield. But panic surged through me. I shoved him back, breathing hard. "No." For once, his expression faltered. "I can't," I said, shaking my head violently. "I won't," my voice broke. "Not again. Not after him." The shadow of Sobin lingered like poison between us. Liene's jaw tightened. His eyes darkened, but not with anger, with something heavier. "I'm not him," he said finally, his voice low. "And I'll prove it." Then, without another word, he turned and left, the door clicking shut behind him. I slid to the floor, my chest heaving, my lips still tingling from the ghost of his kiss. And for the first time in years, I was terrified. Not of being left alone, but of being wanted. The rain had not stopped since last night. It beat against my apartment windows in restless rhythm, as if the sky itself shared my inner turmoil. Woo-Rim was curled on the couch under a thick blanket, a cartoon humming quietly on the TV. His small hands clutched his dinosaur plush tightly, eyes still heavy from sleep. And me? I was pacing the living room like a prisoner without chains. Liene's words echoed over and over in my head. "I'm not asking to replace him. I'm asking you to let me stay. Stay." The way his deep voice had lingered on that word made my chest squeeze. It wasn't just a casual offer, not something temporary. It was a promise, a vow, something dangerously close to the kind of bond I'd sworn never to hope for again. I pressed a hand against my stomach, as if the scar of my first heartbreak was still stitched somewhere inside. Sobin had abandoned me at the first sign of weakness. He had chosen his reputation over me, over Woo-Rim. He had decided that our lives weren't worth the weight of his pride. And now, this alpha, this man who had been nothing but cold, feared by everyone, was standing at my doorstep, offering exactly what I once dreamed of. But how could I trust it? "Daddy." Woo-Rim's small voice cut through my storm of thoughts. I froze, turning toward him. He was blinking up at me, hair sticking up at odd angles, blanket sliding off his shoulder. "Yes, baby." I softened immediately, going to kneel beside him. "Why are you walking like the floor is lava?" he asked seriously. His little head tilted. "Are you thinking about Uncle Liene again?" The breath I sucked in nearly choked me. What makes you say that?" Woo-Rim gave me that look, the one that reminded me he was far too smart for his age, too observant. "Because when you think about him, your face gets red like strawberries." I buried my face in my hands. "Woo-Rim. And also," he continued matter-of-factly, "I like him. He buys me ice cream, and he doesn't tell me I'm loud like Auntie Min did. He holds my hand tight when we cross the street. Not like so." He stopped abruptly, looking down. My chest clenched at the way he couldn't even say his father's name. I gently cupped his cheek. "Hey, you don't have to say it. It's okay." He leaned into my hand, eyes glistening. "I want him to be my daddy. Can't he be?" His innocent question broke me in ways words couldn't describe. How could I explain to him that life wasn't that simple? That my heart was too scarred, too afraid, too unwilling to open its gates again? I kissed his forehead, whispering, "I don't know yet, baby. I don't know." That evening, when Woo-Rim was asleep, I found myself staring at my phone, thumb hovering over Liene's number. My entire body screamed not to do it, not to invite him deeper into my fragile world, but my heart betrayed me. I called. He picked up on the first ring. "Parkha." My name on his tongue was not a greeting. It was a claim. My voice trembled. "Can you come over?" I didn't finish. He didn't let me. "I'll be there in 10. And he was. Soaked from the rain, hair plastered to his forehead, black coat heavy with water. Yet even like this, he looked like power incarnate, his sharp eyes locking on me the second I opened the door. I wanted to slam it shut again, afraid of what would happen if I let him inside. But he stepped forward, towering, dripping rain onto my floor. "Why did you call me?" he asked, voice low. I clenched my fists. "Because I can't stop thinking about you." Silence. The only sound was the rain behind him. His throat bobbed, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not control, not coldness, but heat. Then he moved. In one swift motion, he closed the space between us, his hand gripping the back of my neck, his lips crashing against mine with a hunger I'd never known. It wasn't careful. It wasn't tentative. It was fire, raw, consuming fire that devoured every ounce of air in my lungs. I gasped into his mouth, clutching at his coat, tasting the rain, the danger, the alpha in him that I swore I didn't want. And yet, I melted. When he finally pulled back, our breaths ragged, his forehead pressed against mine. "Don't run from me anymore," he whispered. "Don't shut me out." My chest was heaving, tears stinging my eyes. "I'm scared." "I know," he murmured. His thumb brushed my cheek. "So am I. But I'd rather face that fear with you than live without you." And for the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, fate had given me a second chance. The next morning, I woke tangled in his arms, his steady heartbeat against my back, his breath warm against my neck. I should have pushed him away. I should have told him last night was a mistake. But when Woo Rim toddled into the room, rubbing his eyes, and saw us together, when his face lit up like the sun itself, I knew there was no going back. "Daddy," he squealed, running to the bed. "You slept over." Liene smiled, actually smiled, and lifted him onto the bed between us. "Yes," he said, ruffling Woo Rim's hair. "I slept over. Is that okay?" Woo Rim giggled, snuggling between us. "It's the best." And in that moment, as we lay there, the three of us, tangled in warmth and laughter, my heart whispered the truth I had been too afraid to admit. This felt like home. I never thought a single day could feel so heavy. It was strange, how I had once believed my heart couldn't take any more after Sobin left me broken, alone, and clutching the small bundle that would become my everything. Yet here I was again, in the middle of another storm, but this time the storm had a name. Liene. And unlike before, I wasn't the only one caught in it. Woo Rim, my son my entire life, had reached for him, had called him daddy. And Liene, the ruthless, untouchable alpha who everyone seemed to fear, had stepped into our lives with the terrifying stubbornness of a man who would not be denied. But love wasn't something I trusted anymore. Love had teeth, claws, and jagged edges that cut deeper the closer you let it get. And yet, whenever Liene looked at me, like he was staring straight through the walls I built, like he didn't care that I was shattered and scarred, my chest ached with something I had tried so hard to bury. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe us. But could I? The fight we had the night before still echoed in my bones. "Stop pushing me away, Parkha," Liene had said, his voice low, dangerous, but trembling with something that almost sounded like desperation. "Do you think I care about your past? About that beta who hurt you? You think I'd let another man's shadow stop me from claiming what I want?" And me, stupid, terrified me, had snapped back. "What happens when you get tired of me, huh? When you wake up one day and realize you don't want to be Woo Rim's dad anymore? I can't do that again, Liene. I won't let you destroy me like Sobin did." His eyes had darkened, not with anger, but with hurt, and I hated myself for it. I had walked away before he could answer, my chest tight, my heart screaming for him even as my feet carried me away. But the morning after was different. I woke to the sound of Woo Rim giggling in the living room. A soft, deep voice followed, firm, but gentle. "Hold still, little one. You'll fall if you climb there." I froze. That voice. When I rushed out of the bedroom, there he was, Liene, in my apartment, in my living room, wearing a shirt that clung too perfectly to his broad shoulders as he steadied Woo Rim on the couch, his big hands careful, protective. My breath hitched. "What the hell are you doing here?" I demanded, though my voice came out weaker than I intended. Liene's eyes met mine, calm, steady. "You didn't answer your phone. So I came. You can't just—" I stopped when Woo Rim squealed, tugging at Liene's sleeve. "Daddy, look." My entire body stiffened. I wanted to correct him, wanted to remind him that this alpha wasn't his father. But the words died when I saw the way Liene looked at him. Like Woo Rim was his. Like it didn't matter what blood said. My throat tightened. The day blurred into something surreal. Liene refused to leave. He cooked breakfast, scolded Woo Rim when he nearly spilled juice on the floor, then crouched down and helped him stack blocks into a crooked little tower. And me. I stood there like an intruder in my own home, torn between fury and something dangerously close to longing. At one point, Woo Rim climbed onto his lap, tiny fingers tugging at his tie. "Daddy, are you going to stay?" Liene's voice was quiet, but steady. "As long as your mommy lets me." I choked on my coffee. "I am not his mommy." Both of them looked at me then, identical pouts on their faces, and I thought I'd explode. That night, after Woo Rim had finally fallen asleep, I found myself standing on the balcony, arms wrapped around myself against the chill. I didn't hear him approach, But I felt him, his warmth, his presence, the way my body seemed to lean toward him against my will. "You're still running," Liene murmured behind me. "I'm not." "Yes, you are. You're scared. And I get it. You've been hurt. But Parkha," he stepped closer, his breath hot against my ear. "I'm not him. And I never will be." My chest ached. My hands trembled. When I finally turned to face him, his eyes caught mine, sharp, piercing, but softened by something I wasn't used to seeing. Vulnerability. "I don't know how to do this," I whispered. "Then let me show you." And then, his lips were on mine. The kiss wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, consuming, as if he'd been holding himself back for too long. My fingers curled into his shirt, my body betraying me as heat surged through me. His hands framed my face, firm but reverent, as if I were something precious. When we finally pulled apart, both of us breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "You and Woo-rim, you're mine now," he whispered. I should have pushed him away. I should have told him he was wrong. But instead, I whispered back, "Don't break me." "I won't," he vowed. "Not ever." The weeks that followed were different. Liene became a constant. He picked up Woo-rim from daycare, cooked dinners in my tiny kitchen, and kissed me when he thought Woo-rim wasn't looking. Of course, there were fights. Times I lashed out, afraid. Times I doubted his patience. But every time he stayed. Every time he chose us. And slowly, so slowly, I began to believe. The first time we made love, I cried. Not because it hurt. Not because I was scared. But because it was the first time I had ever felt cherished. Every touch, every kiss, every whispered promise against my skin. It was all him, all Liene, claiming me not with force, but with devotion. When it was over, he held me so tightly I thought I might break apart in his arms. "You're mine, Parkha," he whispered against my hair. "And I'll spend the rest of my life proving it." For once, I didn't doubt him. Months later, at the park, Woo-rim ran ahead of us, his laughter ringing through the air. "Daddy, Mommy, hurry." I groaned. I told him to stop calling me that. Liene's arm slid around my shoulders, pulling me against him. "Why fight it? You're mine. He's ours." Sounds perfect to me. I looked up at him, at the alpha I once feared, the man who had walked into my life uninvited and refused to leave. And for the first time, I smiled without hesitation. Maybe fate knew what it was doing after all.